Welcome back, everybody. We're out here on one of those showery April days, so I figured I'd take a chance and talk about one of my favorite things in the whole wide world, firewood. Full disclosure, I wanted to make this video earlier today before the rain came, but there's a stock car race going on at the New Hampshire Motor Speedway. It's like a mile that way, and it's pretty loud, hard to tune out on the camera, but they're in a rain delay now because it's raining, so perfect time to talk about firewood and keeping it dry. So I broke the Easy Up out for this one, so even though you're not going to hear the track noise, hopefully, you might hear some pitter-patter up on the Easy Up, and you're not going to get a ton of different angles in this one, but if you stay tuned, you'll get a ton of different information. And it's one man's perspective, and the advice is worth what you paid for it. It's free, so take that with a grain of salt. But yeah, I just got a comment on the channel on one of our videos from a man presumably called DC Isaacs, and he said, "Love your videos, thank you. Do you not cover your firewood? If not, how does it burn?" And the answer to that is, it's not covered. And the answer to the second part is it burns. So I'm going to walk you through that now. So any of you that have been following along the channel for any amount of time know we have a system in place. So I live in New Hampshire, central New Hampshire, and we burn about 6 to 8 cords of wood a year. That's a primary heat source for the large house we have. And we don't have any special, it's old cast iron stove, so not super efficient. That's partially why it takes so much. And we have an old timber frame house that isn't super well insulated. It gets a little windy in there when it's windy out. But this is our typical firewood. This is a piece of red oak. This will take just as long, or this will take longer than just about any other piece of firewood to season. And this is how we season it behind me. We try to keep about 10 cords on hand, seasoning or in rotation, ready to burn. That's about 5 cords behind me, you see, and we've got another 4 or 5 in our woodshed basement area, and that works out real good. But I get that question quite a bit, and I spent quite a bit of time thinking about it, but it's enough work to do the whole firewood thing to try to cover that much wood, 6 to 10 cords. That'd be quite a chore. It'd require quite a bit of sheet metal or tarps. I've dealt with that in the past. Tarps are expensive nowadays, and they just don't hold up if you want to use them as wood covering, especially out in a windy, sunny area like I have here. But that's something we're going to talk about, and that's one of the reasons I'm able to get away with not covering the wood. So, Fisker splitting maul, by the way. This is the 36-inch model. Highly recommend, even if you don't plan to split wood by hand. It's worth the $40 or $50 to have this in the shop. Great peace of mind and a great tool if you've never split wood by hand. I'm pretty confident that maul will make it easier than you would have perceived. But, whew, out of breath from that one swing. Getting old. On the other end of the spectrum from that red oak I just had, this is ash. This was dead ash that fell into the driveway. I just cut this today, and I just split it right now. You can see the holes from the emerald ash borer. I don't know that we have any live ash anymore. It's all dead. Makes great firewood. But from the other end of the spectrum, that red oak, I think you'll find in my area, in New England, it's probably going to take more than a year to season it to get consistently down below 20%, kind of no matter how small you cut your pieces. This would be an exceptionally small piece for us. But yeah, red oak, that's going to take the longest. A year and a half to 2 years out in ideal conditions, windy area like this. This ash, I think you'll find, is below 20% internally as it is. I don't know how long it's been standing dead on the edge of the driveway there. Quite some time, I'd imagine, but I assume that this is below, quite a bit below. Well, it's raining now, so it's been out in the rain for a little bit, but it's probably ready to go as is. So I grew up with old grandfather, as I assume a lot of you did. My father is also at an advanced age now, and I had never worried about moisture content of firewood or wood or lumber until I started watching YouTube, and everybody's super concerned about it. I get it, you can't smell or feel things through the camera. So I went out and I bought, or Amazon, I bought one of these pin style moisture meters. You can see the pins there. This had like 14,000 pretty positive reviews, so I went ahead and bought it. I assume it's made in China, general brand, and it was $30 or $40. I'll put a link to one of these in case you decide you like it over the course of this video. But the ash I just threw, so if I stick these pins in as deep as I can, it said, I don't know what it said. Apparently I have to hit the hold button. So it says 19.5, so just about 20 degrees. I don't know if I can program this thing. It beeps if the reading is more than 15%. And there's not a lot of modes. There's a wood mode and a building mode. I don't know the difference. I did not read the manual. So I'll leave it on wood mode. It's $30 or $40, so it's not super high end, but I think it'll give you a general ballpark if you're consistent with how you use it. So this that was just cut today, it fell on the side of my driveway, is ready to burn. I'm pretty confident. And that's why I talked about in a previous video, I have a grove of ash trees. They're all dead, but the grove's getting dwindled because I'm using it for firewood. But that's a nice peace of mind if you were ever getting in a pinch or get injured or whatnot. If you had fallen on hard times, if you have enough acreage or have access to a woodlot, if you go and scope out some ash trees, chances are they're dead pretty much no matter where you are in the world, or at least North America is my understanding. These are probably ready to burn. So if you're like most people, I'd say our system where you don't cover the wood might not work for you. And that's because, so if I were to come out here and grab an armload of wood every morning to fill the stove, that would suck. This is a long ways from my house, for one, and secondly, I don't know that it'd be dry in the winter. So you got snow, you need to have some kind of covered area to protect your wood once it's seasoned. And for us, like I talked about, that's our basement and an attached woodshed. Beyond that, I've showed you a wood elevator. We keep quite a bit of wood right next to the wood stove, so any residual moisture dissipates, becomes humidity in our house in the winter pretty quickly when that wood is queued to get into the wood stove. So we got kind of a leg up there. If you don't have the option to store a bunch of wood in your house, we'll talk about that later. Most of you might think that that's a terrible idea, and it might be, probably is actually. If you don't have the option to store wood in your house, you're going to need an outside area that's covered, at least protected from snow. I know quite a few people that just put a tarp on their wood pile outside next to their house or a little bit ways off, and they do that. They do a couple wheelbarrows a week or a day, however cold it is or what their house is comprised of, and that works for them. But for us, our system works pretty seamlessly and we don't have to cover our wood. So the big worry about bringing wood into your house is that there's a lot of stuff in wood. It's almost always covered in dirt, and if you're not careful, there could be quite a few bugs in it. So we have a lot of options, and we don't cut and split on purpose pungy wood that is moist to start with or wet to start with and has got insects living in it. Just our experience is that just the drying process, once this is out here and once it's dried, exposed to the sun, exposed to the wind, insects don't find it very desirable anymore. We obviously don't check or kiln dry the wood before we bring it into our basement, but our house is made out of wood, and I know that this process has taken place in this house for 30 years or so, and no harm's been done. But that's just one man's experience on one particular property. Your mileage may vary. Bugs are where you don't want to bring bugs into your house. But if you get good, clean, solid wood to start with, like this ash I showed you, obviously it was killed by the emerald ash borer. I can confidently say there are no emerald ash borers interested in this wood anymore now that the cambium layer is gone and dead and dried out. But yeah, something to pay attention to. You don't want your house eaten by bugs, but it'd probably take them a while to eat your house. So here's a piece of red oak. It is a thing of beauty. I'll split this and let you know what it reads after sitting out for, what'd I say, 9 months or so through the winter, mind you. Stay. A little stringy, a little stinky. A lot of people say this stinks. I love the smell of it. It smells like hard work. So I can feel with my hand that that split face is definitely damp. Again, I just picked this off the top of the pile, and theoretically wood does absorb rainwater. So we'll see what the inside reads with these pins. I don't know what that is. I think that's about a ½ inch. Oh, so that one got pretty high. That one's right at 33%. So I know based on just years of experience that if I were to throw this damp feeling wood into the stove, unless there was a fire going already, it would be tricky to start a fire with this. So and if I test the outside that was exposed to the air and the sun as deep as I can, that still gets up to, I'll show you, 18% or so, but that's only ½ inch deep or ¼ inch deep. So just something to think about. If you know for certain, for one reason or another, that you're gonna be rushed the year, if you find out one winter you need to split all your year's worth of wood one winter for the next year, and all you have is red oak or other slow drying woods, I don't know, hard maple isn't super fast to dry. Hickory, we don't have much hickory at all on our property. Your best shot is to, in that case, if you're really trying to rush the process along, I'd probably cover it. It doesn't do much harm as long as it's a loose covering and you're not trapping moisture in there. Cover it while exposing it to as much wind and sun as possible. That's the fastest way you're going to dry wood, short of a kiln. But additionally, cut it as small as you can. It's going to take more time at the splitter table, but I think it'll be worth it when you're trying to keep your family warm in the winter, especially if your wife's got to start the stove for you. She'll appreciate any dryness or smallness in the wood that you can give her. All right, the rain dissipated for a bit, so I can take you outdoors, show you what we're working with. I plan to fill up another row similar to this size in the next 45 days or so. We've got all the dead cut wood staged. I just need to cut it, split it, and start stacking it. I'll make time. But when you're doing this, obviously the wood on top is gonna get the most exposure to the weather and the most, technically, absorb the most moisture. So I put little rounds like this on top, something to shed the water. I don't have any good examples right here, but something like this, it's like a turtle shell. This will bead a lot of water, and it just beads it to the bottom of the pile theoretically. So it's not doing a ton of help, but it's just what I teach my son to do anyways. So put any barky pieces on top of the stack and put it with the bark up, and that sheds water, at least protects the piece directly underneath it. That's my thought anyways. So that was a pretty good litmus test, I think. So even though it is kind of raining, and it had been raining harder than it is now, you take readings on the faces of this wood that are facing south is that way, so west is that way. This gets the prevailing winds from the west, pretty much full sun most of the day, but the outside is going to be less than 20%. Once you split it, I think you're going to see readings above 20, as you saw in those examples there. It'll obviously still burn, not the most efficient if you're trying to get the most bang for your buck. But like I said, this has been about 9 months here, mostly through a winter, so it's going to need this second summer. to really dry out well. And I'm confident come September, October, when we start to need this stuff, well, we don't need it in September, October, but when you could, that year and a half mark definitely will get you. And yeah, those are the factors. You cut your wood small enough, get enough wind on it, I think you could probably avoid covering it, especially if you have a really long time horizon. If you know you've got 2-3 years, I wouldn't worry about it at all. It's when you have a year and a half, 2 years, and even a year. If you're trying to rush it through a year, you're going to start looking at covering your wood. In our case, where we can stay ahead of it, knock on wood, we can probably get by without covering it in our climate. So I realize as we're talking this through that this is a pretty high stakes thing we're talking about here. Is it theoretically could have an impact on your family's well-being. So with that, even though I'm being 100% transparent and honest with you all, it's a very small sample size. It's just me. I know other people that don't cover their wood, but I also know more people that do cover their wood. So that's that. But yeah, I recommend doing a test, somewhat like what we're doing here. If you don't want to spend $30-40 on a moisture meter, it's not rocket science. You split a piece of wood open, there's water gushing out, it's still wet, but and like here, that red oak, I could feel, even the maple, you could feel on the inside that there was some moisture in there. The ash, I couldn't much tell the difference from the outside. It did just fall in a stream and it's been raining, but the ash, I couldn't tell the difference between the outside and the inside that I just split. But yeah, be careful. Don't make your family cold. Just my experience here. All right, the rain picked back up, so we're back under cover. I say thank you again, David Isaacs, for the comment. I appreciate all the comments, but when they start with love your videos, that one gets extra brownie points. Like I said before, I'm doing this just as much for you guys as I am for myself, so I appreciate that some of you, at least a couple of you, are getting some value out of this, so I really appreciate that. And yeah, I think that answers the question pretty thoroughly. Do we cover our firewood? No, at least for the first year and a half, 2 years. Those couple of things in our specific scenario, in our specific climate, allow us to not cover our firewood. The fact that we have a long enough time horizon, probably most importantly, that we have a year and a half or 2 years where we can let this live out in the wind and the sun, stack drying. I think that is a big benefit and one of the reasons we're able to get away with it. And probably the second most important is that we do have a period of time before it makes its way into the stove that it's undercover. It's in our woodshed or in our basement or stacked next to the wood stove. That protects it from that last level of moisture and will off-gas any residual moisture once it gets into a dry house or a dry basement, theoretically. And the third thing, probably most importantly, that we didn't really touch on, but as you can see, we stack these in long linear rows. That really helps with airflow. I guess we did touch on it. And the exposure to the wind and the sun. I understand that not everybody has that luxury, I'll say. If you have a more compact property or a property that's super hilly and you can't even find a flat spot to stack your wood, or you're stacking it in the woods, you're at a disadvantage, and it's going to take a little bit longer if you can't get that airflow. And yeah, really appreciate you guys following along. If you made it to the end of this video, it was all really chatty. I appreciate it. I'm going to go drink some water. I don't usually talk this much, believe it or not. And yeah, thanks for following along, and we'll see you guys at the next one. Take care.